everybody. This is Pastor Steve once again with Coffee Time Q&A. I'm here with Adam the Mad Hatter Rastetter.
Hey, guys.
It's just us today, and we're going to be drinking a coffee somewhat local. It's in Williamsburg, Virginia, not far from here. This is from Column 15, The Science of Good Coffee. It's a Colombian dark, roasted on June the 2nd. So, what, 5 days ago?
Wow.
Pretty fresh
new
stuff. Brand new.
It's very fresh.
Very fresh. Yeah, and it smells very fresh. It smells very strong. Rodney, every time Rodney provides coffee, it's like hardcore.
Let's say dark on it. I think it did.
It's dark.
Colombian dark. That's it.
You could always make coffee weaker by adding water.
It smells like pine tar.
That's pine tar, but it's good.
But it tastes like
I like it.
very good.
I love it.
I was going to say like heaven. And I'm like, well, that's a
Yeah.
little overstatement. Heavenly. No, good stuff. Thanks, Rod.
Yeah,
good
that's
coffee.
good. It's very good.
Williamsburg. We have a listener question today. This comes from one of the charter members of Water's Edge Church.
Yes.
Carolyn Terry and her small group. They got into a discussion in their community group. She leads the women's group on Wednesday nights, and they were talking about the Sabbath. It came up in their discussion, and it says, per a small group discussion, God is very detailed in Exodus 28 through 11 that the Sabbath should be kept as a holy day. In today's culture of casual church attire, shopping, doing chores, etc., on what used to be a special day of the week, how well are we keeping the Sabbath? Has Sunday just become like any other weekday except for an hour at church in the morning? How can we do better without becoming rigid and legalistic as Jesus taught against? A lot of good stuff there.
That's a great question.
Good things to ponder.
Yeah, because I can imagine a lot of different Christians probably have different views on the Sabbath, and so I think we'll take a look at the Bible and see what it says. So she mentioned Exodus 20. So this is the Ten Commandments.
Rodney would be like,
Oh.
but what does the Bible say?
What does the Bible say
That's
about
right.
the Sabbath? So she mentioned Exodus 20. So this is the fourth commandment, right, of the 10 commandments that was given to Moses. I'll read it. Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Fourth commandment: remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your livestock or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons this is tricky in the New Covenant era is because it's one of the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, we keep all the other 9. Why don't we keep this one here? Or, some people do. And so let's flesh this out. Let's think a little bit about the Sabbath, because it's not something we can just quickly dismiss. And it's not something, because of the serious nature, like the Lord speaks about it in the Old Testament. This was a capital offense to break the Sabbath. It was serious.
Yeah.
And so when we come to the New Testament, we have a variety of teaching on it. We have the Sabbath mentioned a lot in the Gospels, and Paul mentions it quite a bit in the epistles. So we're going to look at some of the New Testament teaching, and I'll set the stage, I think, for what I believe to be in Jesus's teaching, the possible sort of fulfillment and reinterpretation of what had come to be the way that they celebrated the Sabbath. Because they took that to ultimate extremes,
Right,
of
right.
like what it means to not work, what it means to rest on the Sabbath. And even modern day Orthodox Jews won't flip on a light switch because that ignites, electricity, which is kind of like the fire, and you weren't allowed to start a fire to cook your food in the Old Testament.
Right.
And so we can take this all over the place. What constitutes work? What was the purpose of the Sabbath? And so we find Jesus talking about it often, because it was often a point of controversy when we look at his ministry. I'm going to begin in Matthew 11. And towards the end of Matthew 11, this is cool because Jesus invites, his followers to come to him. He's inviting everybody. Come to me, he says in Matthew 11:28. all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You see, I think that the burden, Jesus often talked about the yoke of the Pharisees being a heavy burden that they had put on the backs of the people, to where obeying God was cumbersome and not a freeing thing, right? It was a laborious thing. And so even the way they were to keep the Sabbath, which was supposed to be a day of rest, became a very difficult thing to do. You know, it's like, what can I do? Can I even get up and walk over here to pick this up? Or, you know, and so it was, but here we have Jesus saying, come to me and I'll give you rest. And I think that's important, because what happens next, you know, in our English Bibles, we switch chapters, we go to chapter 12 and we separate it. But the very next thing in Matthew chapter 12, that was the end of 11, very next thing are two recorded controversies that took place on the Sabbath. First, Jesus and his disciples are walking through grain fields. His disciples are hungry, so they pick some grains, they pluck some, and they eat them. And they get chastised for it. The Pharisees see this. They say, look, your disciples are doing what's not lawful to do on the Sabbath. Have you not? And then Jesus responds to them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry? And those who were with him, how he entered the house of God, ate the bread of the presence, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. Now, that's a clue. So Jesus is saying something greater than the temple is here. And he says, and if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. So whatever they were accusing his disciples of doing, Jesus is saying, no, they're guiltless here. They haven't broken the Sabbath because they plucked some grain and are eating it. And then he says, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So Jesus has dominion and authority and rule over how we view the Sabbath if we submit to him as Lord, right?
Absolutely.
And in you have it in Mark 2, the same story is told.
Yeah.
But the phrase there there's something missing from Matthew that's present in Mark.
I think it was Mark 2, verse 27. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So here he wants them to know, like, the Sabbath is a gift from God, right? This is something that God has given man to rest, right? Because it's good for the human body. It's good for our minds, our health, right? Yeah. So he's given this to man, and what the Pharisees had done was placed this heavy burden on everyone, to where it was like work to keep the Sabbath, right? It was like hard to keep the Sabbath, right? That was not the way it was meant to be.
Yeah, but I think that phrase, Sabbath was made for man, right?
Yeah.
So whatever it is, it should benefit us. It's something for our good that the Lord has put in place for us. And so fast forward that, you know, Jesus, Lord of the Sabbath, Sabbath is made for man. Jesus clearly wasn't practicing the traditions of his day. You know, he heals they eat the grain there. We have him healing a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath. That's the very next thing that happens in Matthew 12. And then John 9, we have him healing a man born blind on the Sabbath, and he's criticized for that. And so you have Jesus just like changing the way people thought about the Sabbath. And being Lord of the Sabbath, it opens up this idea that maybe the fulfillment of the Sabbath and the use of the Sabbath is different under the new covenant, which I believe is exactly what we see when we get into the New Testament, like epistles, you know, Paul writing in Romans, Paul writing in Colossians. That's where I'd like to kind of go next. Colossians 2 tells us specifically that the Sabbath was a shadow of what was to come. Colossians 2, I think it's starting like down in verse 16-ish.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, go for it. I'm still flipping around.
Therefore, I'm going to read verses 16 and 17, Colossians 2. Therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival, or a new moon, or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ.
Yeah, so, saying the substance belongs to Christ means Christ is the fulfillment of the Sabbath. That there is and this is big, like there is an eternal rest that Jesus invites us into that fulfills the Sabbath. In the Old Testament, right, it served a great purpose. Mm-hmm. It served to show that the weekly rhythms, we work 6 days a week, we rest a day. And that says something about God as creator, right? And Exodus 20 ties it to creation. And it says something about God as redeemer in Deuteronomy, that he brought them out of the land of Egypt, by his hand, therefore keep the Sabbath,
Yeah.
And so he redeemed them, he created them. It serves its purpose, but yet it's pointing us to a deeper reality, and that is the reality of eternal rest for our souls in Jesus Christ. And I think that's a really important thing, because when it came to the gospel being spread under the new covenant, there were Gentiles being converted who didn't grow up keeping the Sabbath. That wasn't a part of their culture, wasn't part of their customs. Mm-hmm. And so the early church pretty quickly was faced with these controversies about how do we teach these new converts who are Gentiles? Do they need to get circumcised? Mm-hmm. Do they need to practice Jewish observances such as the Sabbath or the new moon or the things that he's mentioning here? And I think the Apostle Paul points to a principle in Romans 14 that we can derive from as a principle of conscience for weak brothers and strong brothers. So let's look at Romans 14.
Yeah. In Romans 14, he's talking about, first of all, he doesn't want them to judge one another in these things, right? And he's talking about eating meat, and he doesn't want the one who does eat meat to judge the one who doesn't, and vice versa. And then in verse 5, Romans 14, verse 5, he starts talking about a day. So he says, one person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day, observe it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while the one who abstains in honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. So here, I think the point is, in whatever decision you make, it should be honoring to God. Like, so if this is speaking of the Sabbath, I think first of all, I would say Paul is not trying to, maybe this is like circumcision with the Gentiles. He's not trying to say, okay, you Gentiles, this is now law for you. Is that, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is not what you need. So here he's saying in honor of the Lord, don't, this isn't something that if you don't do this, that you're just being lazy and not considering it, but this should be something that should be honoring the Lord in the way that you handle this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you pay close attention to the words, it seems like some people are if this day refers to the Sabbath, and I really believe it does, like it seems pretty clear that they're esteeming one day as better than another. They're elevating one day as holy to the Lord over the other days.
Right.
But it says, while another esteems all days. So then it's like every day we should honor God. Every day we should live for the Lord. Every day we should mark as a day that the Lord has made, right? And seek to live for him and glorify him in those days. And so, but the principle of honoring God, it means we're giving thought to how we spend that day.
Right.
And I think at the heart of this question is the reality that in our day, very little thought is given to a holy day to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And it used to be, we haven't even talked about the fact that the Sabbath was really a Saturday.
Right.
The word being Saturday, it was the seventh day. It started at, in the evening when the sun went down on Friday. And then it ended when the sun went down on Saturday. So there's a 24-hour period referring to a Saturday. The reason people think of Sunday as a Sabbath now for Christians is because when Christ resurrected on a Sunday, that became known as the Lord's Day. And when Christians began to gather in groups to worship together, they did so on the Lord's Day, on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Early Jewish Christians were still observing the Sabbath. They were still going to the temple on the Sabbath, praying. We see that in Acts 2. It was still very much a part of their lives. But the Lord's Day, for many people, they've begun to regard that, which is really the first day, not the last day, as the Sabbath. And
we don't see that in the New Testament as far as the seventh day is still the Sabbath.
Yeah. I mean, there's no like clear thing, but it's clear that the church on Sundays worship together. This was a holy day to the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I think culturally in our country, we're generationally, this has changed dramatically because a generation ago, I mean, a lot of places were closed on Sundays.
Right.
The ball fields were closed. You weren't having little league games on Sunday mornings and as many tournaments and stuff on the weekends. Now it's like Sunday's fair game, and the culture is grabbing those time slots because we're continually making each other more and more and more busy, which I think is all the more reason to give serious consideration to a holy day to the Lord, to really think about how am I spending, and regardless of the day, like I just in principle, I think that I don't think one day like Saturday or Sunday, for me, Sunday is my Sabbath day. We go to church together as a family. And it's a day of rest. I try not to do any other work that day. I mentioned yesterday in the sermon, like I like to nap on Sundays when I get home. It's a rest.
Refreshing.
We have family dinner and we pray to the Lord together as a family. We spend time together really investing in that. It's a day that we set apart as different and distinct from every other day. And it's a holy day to the Lord for us.
Right.
But I think so little thought is given to it now. It's like some people go to church and then, we might go to the here or there afterwards, and it's just not as distinguished, as it used to be. And I think it's at the heart of this question.
Right. Now, and I think the purpose of it is for us to re-energize, right, in a way to be able to serve the Lord for the upcoming 6 days, right? And it could be, though, that it doesn't have to be on a certain day, right? Do you believe it could be, if that works best for you, that Tuesday's your day or Thursday?
Well, I think that Jesus opened it up. Sabbath was made for man, right?
Right.
And because of, Paul's teaching in Colossians that it's been fulfilled in Christ, he's the substance. We have rest in him. I don't think the day is as significant, but I do think in principle, I think it's a very wise decision, very prudent thing to mark off a day of your week as a day of rest, as a day to recover, as a day to be renewed and rejuvenated for the rest of your week, for what lies ahead, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is certainly at the heart of the question, because if we don't mark that off, we fill it up with all kinds of other activities that aren't refreshing, and I think it can look different for different people. If you sit at a desk all week, it'd probably be good for you to take a jog, a bike ride, and do something that is refreshing in that way, or take a nap, but actually set that aside, that when you're doing those things, that you're intentionally thinking of rest, and that God has given you this day, and to focus on Him.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a burden. Right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be for us, for our good.
Right.
Man, how refreshing does it sound, to really mark it off and say, you know what, I'm going to schedule a day of rest in my week, and that's going to be a regular thing. And man, it's so refreshing. I don't know why there'd be pushback against that in principle.
Right.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
There was something else in the question that came up. It was about casual attire, because I think a generation ago, everybody wore suits and ties to church. There was definitely a different dress. I mean, the scripture doesn't speak to that. We're not commanded, specifically about any kind of outward thing other than to dress modestly. But I think behind that too is another indicator that it's not as a distinguished day as it was before. Because think growing up, you think like your grandparents probably grew up, if they went to church, like Sunday was probably the only day of the week that they really got dressed up, and it just marked it. It was another marker that this day is different than the other days. Right. And so I think that's what's kind of underneath the dress piece of that. But used not to be able to buy alcohol on Sundays. There was a whole lot of things that didn't occur on Sundays that now do in our country. And I can see how that would be a little troubling for, especially if you grew up in a generation where that was, you just saw that slip, more and more away.
But I think it is a matter of the heart. I mentioned, going for a bike ride or something like that, and it probably would have been considered work, back in the, but I think that the way that you rest can look different for different people. And,
Absolutely.
Certainly, I wouldn't say, cooking a meal or things like that, because people can be really legalistic about things like that too.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think that, there is, the Sabbath was given in the Old Testament to an agrarian society where it's like all week we're in the fields, right? Put down your shovels, put down your tools, and take a day to rest and reflect on the Lord, worship together, honor God, and now it's, I think because so much of our jobs are leisurely to some people. A lot of people work at home. A lot of people work in an office. They don't have physical activity. That the physical activity itself can be rejuvenating and restful. Taking a walk on the beach, going down to the boardwalk or wherever. So I think that's a good point. And I think Jesus certainly, in his teaching on the Sabbath being made for man, not man being made for the Sabbath, means we're not slaves to the Sabbath. It means that the Sabbath serves us, and by a God-given blessing to have this rest. And I think people should be more prudent, to be honest, of thinking through marking, protecting that. Absolutely. And, some people could view us as a little prude. I know we haven't let our kids play. They've played sports on Sundays, but whenever anything's been scheduled around church time, that's just a no. It's like, oh, well, they can't be there that day, a tournament game or whatever. And, that's just something we uphold. We honor the Lord, and we want to protect that. Now we want to protect that worship time together, and we want to protect that time around the table that we have as a family on Sundays.
It means a lot to your kids.
Yeah, it's marked off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. Anything else? I'm sure there's a whole lot that'll rattle some thoughts in the comments, possibly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Rodney?
But what does the Bible say?
That's right.
Check it out every Monday. New episodes release.
Yeah.
A little plug for Rod.
That's right.
All right. Well, God bless you all. Thank you all for checking out this week's episode of Coffee Time Q&A. Yep. We're out.
God bless.
Hey, wait, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you click that subscribe button so that way you know when we put out new podcast episodes. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the subscribe button, click the like button, ding that bell. That way you know when we release new videos. And leave us comments. We love comments. We love questions. If you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. That way we know what improvements we may need to make, or we may just be happy to hear how well we're doing, if we are doing well. We love you all, and God bless.